Long before he was, a household name, a young Warren Buffett was quietly mailing out these incredible letters to a small group of partners in Omaha. So today, we're cracking open the vault. We're going to explore those foundational documents and unpack the exact system that would eventually make him a legend.
So that was Buffett way back in 1959, already super wary of market hype. In a world that's always driven by emotion and the promise of quick riches, how did this guy create a repeatable system to consistently beat, well, pretty much everyone? All right, let's get into it. Okay, so before we even get to what he was buying, we first have to understand how he was keeping score. And this is huge. His number one rule, the entire foundation for his whole partnership, was all about relative performance.
So here it is, his simple public promise to his partners. And it wasn't, hey, we're going to make money every single year, because, that's impossible. No, it was this: outperform the market by a big margin over the long haul. He wanted to average 10 percentage points better than the Dow, and he wanted his partners to judge him on that one single yardstick.
And this right here, this is absolutely crucial. See, his real genius wasn't just about picking winners. It was about protecting capital. He knew deep down that the key to long-term success was just avoiding those big, devastating losses. Losing way less than the market in a bad year was, to him, a much bigger win than just keeping up when times were good.
And just look at what happened when the Dow had a down year. Take a look at 1957. The market gets hammered, loses over 8%. Buffett's partnership, it's up over 10%. Same story in 1960 and 1962. It's incredible. He wasn't just losing less. A lot of the time, he was making impressive gains while everyone else was getting crushed.
So what happens when you do this year after year? Well, this compounding effect, especially because you protected the downside so well, just creates this massive, massive gap over time. I mean, after only 6 years, money in his partnership grew almost 300%. That same money in the Dow, just over 60%. That right there is the power of winning by not losing. All right, so you're probably asking, how on earth did he pull this off? Well, it wasn't magic. Let's get into his toolkit, because his method wasn't just one thing. It was this flexible, three-pronged attack designed to find value absolutely anywhere it was hiding. So first up, you've got the generals. You can think of these as his classic old-school value plays. Buying good, solid companies at just ridiculously cheap bargain basement prices. He had no control and no set timeline, but he knew he was buying a dollar's worth of business for like 50 cents, and he was totally happy to wait for the market to figure out its mistake. Next up, the workouts, and these were just brilliant because their success had almost nothing to do with what the stock market was doing. We're talking mergers, liquidations, stuff like that. Buffett could calculate the likely profit and the timeline with pretty good accuracy. This was like a whole separate engine in his portfolio, just chugging along and spitting out steady returns no matter what the Dow did. And finally, the most active and maybe the most fascinating strategy, the controls. This is where things get really interesting. This is where Buffett stops waiting for good things to happen and starts making them happen himself. He'd buy enough of a company to get a seat at the table and basically create his own catalyst for profit. So to really see how powerful this control strategy could be, let's zoom in on a real-world example, the absolutely brilliant turnaround of this sleepy little farm equipment company called Dempster Mill. So Buffett gets control of Dempster in August of '61. He sees a company with good bones, but just terrible management. He tries to work with the old guard for 6 months, gets nowhere. So he makes a change, a big one. He brings in this tough-as-nails manager named Harry Bottle, gives him a clear mission, and then just gets out of his way. And the results? They were almost immediate. I mean, Bottle was like a tornado. He just ripped through the company, slashing all this useless inventory that was sitting around collecting dust, turning it into cold, hard cash. And then he used that cash to pretty much wipe out all of the company's debt. The whole financial picture just radically changed in a single year. So what's the bottom line here? Well, Buffett's own valuation of his shares in the company skyrocketed from about $35 to over 51. He literally manufactured value out of what was already there. And get this, he did it in a year when the overall stock market actually went down. He created his own good news. And this quote from the very letter where he talks about Dempster, man, it just perfectly captures his whole philosophy. Buys so cheap that you have this huge margin of safety. That way, you don't need everything to go right to win. A so-so result will be just fine, and a really good result, well, that's just the frosting on the cake.
Okay, so what does all this mean for us today? I mean, these letters are over 60 years old. Why should we care? Why does this blueprint still matter right now, in the market we're in? One of the most powerful and maybe surprising ideas in these letters is how he completely redefines what it means to be a conservative investor. And let me tell you, his answer, it just flips conventional wisdom right on its head. See, he argued that real safety, it doesn't come from just following the crowd into whatever stock is popular and flying high. He said that's not being conservative, that's just speculating. Real, true conservatism, that only comes from doing the hard work. It comes from knowledge and from reason. So when you put it all together, what do you get? You get this incredibly clear, logical blueprint for navigating any market. It's about, measuring yourself the right way, focusing on not losing, having a whole toolkit of different ways to find value, always insisting on a margin of safety, and defining being conservative by how well you think, not by how popular your ideas are. And that really brings us to the big question for all of us today, doesn't it? In this crazy age of crypto and AI stocks and everything moving a million miles an hour, are these 60-year-old principles about patience and value and reason just obsolete, a relic of the past? Or are they maybe more essential than they've ever been? I think if you go back and read these letters, the answer is pretty clear.